American football in Finland.
Let's go to like player participation. Actually, I'm glad I got you on today, Mark, because one thing I really want to talk about with player participation is that it's crazy to me how there's teams that can get into the Maple League and then 1 or 2 years later they don't have a team. They don't have enough players to play this sport, yet we have almost 40 club teams in this very small country of 6 million people. My thinking on player participation is to do a better job with the youth. And obviously, Mark, this is your ballpark, so I'm gonna let you take over on the ideas of how to do it. But I definitely think that a little bit more participation with the youth would help the sport last longer.
Well, we've told the guys, at some point, pretty much when you go from U15 to U17, and especially U17 to U19, that it's not a hobby anymore. What are you looking to do with this? Are you looking to to play on the men's team someday? And if so, these are the things that you need to do. And I've had my heart broken so many times by kids who leave the sport, and I just don't understand it. But it happens every year, and it just shocks me every time. But they have to have something to look forward to. There has to be that continuity. There has to be a link between the juniors and the men's. And some teams do it, or some clubs do it real well. Some don't. Some are totally separate. Some do a lot of things together. But I've always tried to get the men's team to, if they can't necessarily come to the games, but at least to when they have their games, that the young men or the juniors, they come out there, and we've had them like go with their position guy and stand out before the games and things like that, so they can kind of dream that, hey, someday I'll be on this field and that type of thing. But it's an ongoing battle to try and get these kids to come back every year. Some are automatic, but some, man, it takes a lot of talking to get them to come in. And so, it's not like the States where it's automatic. Everybody's coming back next year. We'll see you after baseball season on the football field. It's, if they know that their team is going to be there, that's a big thing. We've had 2 cases in the last couple of years with Taft and Turku that they've just disappeared, the men's team. And, some decide to go other places, but some just go and don't come back. And so, you have to have that stability that, hey, we're always going to be here, and there's a place for you if you're going to do, A, B, and C to be on this field someday.
You think maybe if there was less divisions for youth, maybe that would help? Like if there weren't so many teams. But one thing I've noticed with club teams, and I assume this goes for other sports as well, is even though there's a club name, the teams are kind of run separate as their own like small organizations, but everyone is under one umbrella. So like you said, with the juniors and the men's teams, we had a situation with the Wolverines last season where there was one day where there was a pink men's game, a juniors game, the first men's game, all in the same day. So if anyone like was involved with all those teams, they're like, oh my God, I just lost my Saturday. And I was one of those people. Like I almost lost my whole day because I was coaching juniors, then I had to play in the game. And that comes into that, oh, well, now I'm overworked. You feel overworked because it's like 3 different teams. Like they're not all together. It reminds me of when I was in the States, I coached, and obviously when I was younger, I played Little League. Well, Little League teams, usually there's like 4 or 5 teams of youth groups, but they all play their games on one day. And you would think that, oh, well, this is more of the overworked. But the way that it was kind of presented was that, hey, it's fun that I'm going to spend my Saturday with these players who are like me, on the same team as me. I want to be like them. I remember when I was, 8 or 9 years old, there was a guy who's like 12 or 13. He played on the oldest team. I played on one of the younger teams, but he was my hero. So I would like wake my mom up early and be like, hey, I want to go watch him play. And then after I would watch him play, he would stay and watch me play because he knows that I'm like rooting for him. And it brings that camaraderie so that I don't feel bad when they ask me to be the water boy or hold the chain that day. Like that's another thing that happens is you can't get people to support because they don't want to be there because they have other things going on in their mind. Now I feel like I'm going on a tangent and I lost my point as well. But basically what I'm trying to say is that I think if we could get the sport to be more cohesion between the youth and the men's, or even just the clubs in general, these kids, they go to play this sport, and what is the ultimate goal? It's just something for them to do. And I think kind of having that adult, like that cohesion that, hey, you're playing for this team now, but when you get older, you're going to be able to like play with or be part of this tradition of these people that you actually know.
It's a tough one. I see what you're saying. And so like I say, some programs do better than others, but it is spread out. The practice times are spread out. The games are spread out, and so, it's hard for people to see each other even within the same organization. But one thing you said earlier about whether or not some of these junior programs should combine and have this cohesion amongst themselves, I'm totally for it. I'm adamant that after the age of 13, they should not be playing 7-on-7 anymore. That's not football. That doesn't develop them at all. And it's much better that these towns that are somewhat close to each other combine their boys and play 11-on-11 because they're just not going to make the progress at 7-on-7. A few of them have done it, but a few of them or just seem to be content year after year to play 7-on-7. And the first time some of these boys ever play 11-on-11 is at men's. We had last year in the U17, the national team, half our team had never played 11-on-11 before, because so many of our boys were from these small areas. And so, I know there's hardships, but this year in Porvoo, my U17 team, we had 6 kids from Porvoo. We had kids from Lahti, Kotka, Kouvola, Vanta, and so forth. And that made up our team. There was only like 15 or 16 of us, but it was enough for us to have an actual 11-on-11 team. And, it took some on their part, to make that drive, a couple of times a week and things like that. But they were in it and they wanted to do it. And, they're much the better for it, having played 11-on-11.
I noticed that the younger ages, they have the kids do like these like tournaments. Is that right? Like the younger ones?
This is the first year that U13 did not do that. But up until this year, all the way up through U13, they did these tournaments, which were 2 games a day, timed 2 20-minute halves.
That is not a good way to do American football. It's awesome for basketball, but that's hurtful for the kids to have them play the sport that much. Like two football games in a day is hard enough, but do they really have time to like learn the sport that way? I don't agree with that at all. I was interested about it when I seen I look up schedules all the time and I saw like tournaments. I was like, how are they doing this?
Yeah, so I think now it's just U9. There's only a few teams, but definitely U11 did it this year. But for the first time, U13 actually had games and not these tournament games. So a little bit of progress. But still, too many guys playing 7-on-7. U19, they're still playing 7-on-7. That's just not right.
There's a 7-on-7 in U19?
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with you. After the age of 13, after you become a teenager, you should not be doing 7-on-7 if you plan on playing the sport anymore. Even if you don't plan on playing the sport anymore, you still should have 11 people on the field. American football was never meant to be played with less than 11 people on the field.
Yeah, when we moved here, my son had played since he was 7, and we moved here when he was 13, and that was the time they played 7-on-7, and so we had to quickly adapt to that. It was very, very odd and very, very difficult. And then in U15 we went to 9-on-9, which now U13 is doing, and this was the first year that U15 went 11-on-11. And I think there was maybe 5 teams that made it, but there was like 9 or 10 teams that played 7-on-7. So there's still that.
I think 9 is all right. I guess I would be okay with 9.
9 was interesting.
Yeah, but 7 just is too dramatic of a change compared to the 11 to me.
Yeah, I think some of the teams that had the U19 7-on-7 were from those smaller areas. And a lot of those guys were already playing on their men's team because their men's teams were first, second, or even third division. So I think that's somewhat in play. But then again, this year U19 was played in Turku, Taft, and I think Hämeenlinna. And so those are, they all had Maple League teams. Well, I guess Taft didn't. But they could only get 7-on-7 going with U19, and that's the next steps, before they get to the men's. So, that's not a bad idea now, I guess, even in some of these bigger teams.
I don't know. I feel weird about having the kids play so many like games. Like I know the rules here. If you're under 19, you can play on like 2 or 3 teams in a weekend and stuff like that. And there's
just 2.
Oh, just 2. I find it a little bit detrimental to the development of some of these younger kids who, like you said, their age group, there's not enough players. So then they play with the men's as well. And it's like, are they really learning or getting better at the sport if they're not really good enough for the men's, but maybe they need more than a 7-on-7 or 9-on-9 group to actually develop in their age group? I'm still going back to what you said earlier, Mark. I say combine the cities and give the kids the opportunity to play against their age group and develop together. I find it a little bit unfair when you have like some of these like 19Us or 17Us, and there's kids that are like 13 and 15 playing on those teams. I know with the Wolverines, we had a situation where on our 19U, we had the same players from our 17U.
That's very common.
Literally 15 years old playing on 19U. For some players, that's a great jump. Maybe they're a little bit ahead. But for the most part, that's not fair to these kids that are younger and trying to learn, especially when you have like 6 or 7 teams and 2 or 3 of them are very close in proximity. And you're like, why not join those 2 instead of stretching those 2 into 15-year-olds playing on the 19U?
Yeah, the way they scheduled it, I think the last 2 years now is they play the U19 season first. This year was the first year they totally completed the U19 season, and then a week later U17 start. So what are those U17 kids going to do? Are they going to wait around for 4 months, until their season starts, or are they going to play on U19 in the meantime? Sure. Of course, they're going to play on U19 in the meantime. Are they going to play? I don't know. Actually field time, but I guess practice. At least practicing and getting those type of reps in.
We're coaching U19 with the Wolverines, and going towards the end of the season, we're getting ready for playoffs, and coaches are making these speeches like, you got to hold your teammates accountable. And one of the kids, and this sticks in my mind, and I'm not going to say their names or anything, but it sticks in my mind because one of the kids says, this isn't even my team. Why should I have to be a leader? Obviously, to me personally, I was like, I should slap this kid in the mouth, but I won't because he's not my kid. But the thought process was, just like what you just said, his team didn't start until later. He was a U17 guy. He was 16 years old, and he was playing on U19. So he didn't feel the need to, like, take it more seriously than it was. He's like, I'm just waiting till my season starts. Obviously, that's not the attitude you want your players to have going into a playoff game. But how do you prevent that if they know for a fact that their season hasn't started? And that's that separation from camaraderie that I'm talking about. Like this kid, the only reason he was playing was because we needed the players. We needed as many players as we could use, and he wasn't going to be playing his season until later. So even though I think it was a horrible thing he said, it epitomized like the situation. Like it explained it so clearly when he said it that way.
Actually, just so you know, just real quick, I think the reason why they do the U19 first is there's the Army question. Because a lot of guys enter into the Army midsummer so they can get most of their season in before they go, and then they're high school graduation, things like that. So I think that's why they put U19 first. Otherwise, it would make obviously more sense to have U17 first and then U19 later. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I understand the scheduling has to be hectic. I would never want to be the person in charge of that because
they've gotten better on it for youth. They've gotten a lot better. Like I said, this year playing the whole U19 season. Not last year was crazy because last year you would have a U17 game on Friday and a U19 game on Saturday. That happened all the time last year. Now that's when it got really crazy. So they did make it, and they did make an improvement by doing it this way.
Yeah, I know scheduling is always going to be hard. It is what it is when you have like 55,000 teams.
American football in Finland.